Well, looky here, looky here. Serenity Winz once again. Very low budget production as far as the opening sequence is concerned, but we have good news. Stick around and we'll find out more about that. Okay, and hey, just so you know, right? Because you always wanted to know, I can officially say that the show has no sorbat potassium involved. That's right. Serenity Winz is happy to say we do not have any sorbat potassium. Hey, how's it going, everybody? I hope this makes it to you in the proper way. I have to share with you on episode number 9, we're having some technical issues here. Yeah, definitely some technical issues. Nothing major, but definitely something worth looking into. I don't exactly know what's going on. I don't know if it's my internet, but my internet should not be affected because I use my phone. Maybe TikTok is being overloaded right now. I don't know. So this is going to be a first. And before I get into the technicals of this first, let me just get all that stuff out of the way so we can move on and continue this podcast, especially now that I'm really seeing the podcast as something that people get to listen to on YouTube. I love TikTok. I really want people to come on to the live when they can because there's a lot of interaction when there's people there. With that said, I'm telling more and more people to go on YouTube and listen to it because you can listen to the full hour and at your speed and wherever you want. You could be in your car, you could be in your garden, you could be anywhere. So let me start off by saying the welcome. Welcome to Serenity Winz, episode number 9. That's right. We got a few more graphics involved now, and we got some really cool graphics that I'm going to specifically talk to you about. And so I put a big number 9. Remember that song from the Beatles when it was like, played backwards? It was "Turn Me On, Dead Man, Turn Me On, Dead Man." Was it true? Is it not true? I don't know. Who am I to judge? But I put it up there. So obviously in the next one. So at least now when you see one of the podcasts, you'll know, okay, this is number 9. I've already listened to number 9. Oh, this is not. Oh, okay. And if you want to go back, you say, oh, I remember he spoke about something. And so now you got a big number there. So I don't want this show to be too, spiritual and too I don't know what the word is I'm looking for. I would say Baba Ganoush, but those of you who live in Val David understand what that means. But I do want to start a tradition where we start the show because it is about my recovery, kind of going through the AA and all that stuff. So I want to start with the Serenity Prayer right off the top. And you're welcome to join. It's very simple. It's my source or whatever it is you call your JD or what, I call him JD, but you can call him whatever. I mean, a lot of people use the term God. Definitions are unimportant. So whatever your source is, so you say, my source, give me the serenity to accept the change that I cannot change, the courage to change those that I can, and the wisdom to understand the difference between both of these. And I think it's a beautiful prayer. And I should have said it earlier on, even before I started the show, because like I said, I've been having a bit of technical difficulties today. It seems that TikTok is not able to go on to the live, but I do have the recording button, which means that I'm able to, to record while not doing an actual live. So it's a little strange like that, but hey, it works. It works for me if it works for you. So now let's get to the second thing that's always important that we get into. number one, this show, Serenity Winz, and myself, we are not at all sponsored, affiliated, or associated with any official movement such as Alcoholics Anonymous. This is a brainchild that I've created for, I would say myself, but I guess it's for others also. And so let's get that officially out of the way. Now, I don't know if you can hear that car in the background, but let's do an official drum roll because I got some great news for all of you, not just those of you watching me on TikTok, but if I take some of this and I put it on, IG or Facebook or whatever, and you all get to benefit from what I'm about to say. Drum roll, please. I actually practiced today. Does it show? I didn't practice that much. Does it show? So my client and I, we came to an agreement. And so he is, I don't know what the word is. I guess he's helping me. He's definitely assisting me. And that assistant is going to make your life even better. Now, as you can see, there's a big number 9 up there, right? Up there. I don't know if I'm putting my finger at the right spot. And then down there, there's Serenity Winz podcast, so you know where you are. But then next on the other side, there's a little thing called cruiserweight.ca. And that's my client. That's his company, Cruiserweight, which has great furniture, great importation from Indonesia, a lot of teak wood. So really some really nice stuff. I have quite a bit, obviously, in my home because, every now and then he's like, hey, you want this? I'm like, yeah, I'll take it. A very kind man, very generous man. And so we came to an agreement, and you're going to see that towards the bottom under Cruiserweight, there's a thing called a promo code, SDW10. So when you go on their website at cruiserweight.ca and you do any shopping and you see something you like, you're going to see at one place there's a box where it says, do you have a promo code? Well, when you type in SDW10, sorry, did I screw that up? I did. Oh my goodness. I did screw that up. All right. You know what? I'm going to do this. I screwed up the code. All right. But I think I could fix it like right now. It's actually SWD. And I don't know why I wrote SW10. So, hold on a second. I'm still going to fix that right now live. So it's SW, right? Serenity Winz. D for discount. And for some reason I put SD, whatever. I mixed it up. But here we go. Oh, where is it? Okay. I'm clicking in a whole bunch of places here. Yes. Hold on a second. Wow, this is like, and then apply. SWD10, yes. And a few years from now, when I'm doing a lot of these podcasts, I have to go back and see all like the first ones, like at least the first 9 or the first 10 that I did, because obviously it's a work in progress. Note to myself, have a producer who's like, you have to put on the right tags. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I got that. All right, so when you go to cruiserweight.ca and you see some really cool furniture, and there's for every kind of budgets. Like if you want to spend a lot of money, you can spend a lot of money. But if you just want something nice, not too expensive, you can find that too. There's a lot of table decorations. There's a lot of living room decorations, things you can hang, things you could put on a chair. Really just go to cruiserweight.ca. And when you purchase something, there's a box where you're supposed to enter a code. And when you enter SWD10 for Serenity Winz discount, 10% you will get 10% discount by putting in this code. So we're really happy about that. For all the times that I said I'm not officially sponsored by a nonprofit organization, which is true. Well, now we're actually recognized by a company that I work with along and as my client, and it's really I'm happy. I'm happy, and I hope you guys enjoy this as much as I do, and really take advantage of it. Go and check it out. Cruiseaway.ca. Like I pronounce it Cruiseaway, but it's like Robinson Crusoe, right? CRU. Anyways, it's spelt there. I actually have a graphic down there. And yeah, so that's awesome. All right. Without further ado, let's get right into subject topic number one of today's podcast, Serenity Winz podcast number 9. So these are actually moments that happen somewhere throughout my week or my life. And it gets me to think, oh, that could be an interesting subject. And I was thinking the other day as I'm starting to date, right? I am. And, why do you date and why do you date not just one girl, but like, you go out and even if you're in a long-term relationship, you end up, you at one point you're like, I need something different. Of course, depending on how long you've been in a relationship, you might realize that that's just something that popping through your head. But after, say, 20 years of marriage, you're not going to go and get that. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about how much variety we need in our life. And more specifically, how does that variety affect us, right? Because as much as we need stability and as much as we need some sense of continuation, if I can say, we also need that sense of variety. And I realized that last week, not just with the dating aspect, but also when I had one of those cravings, right? One of the cravings that I needed to go and eat sugar. Yeah. I had to go and eat sugar. And it wasn't like a lot of sugar, but it was more than my average eating sugar. And I was questioning myself as I was eating the sugar, right? And, I had cookies, right? I was aiming for healthy cookies, and clearly I missed that mark completely. I don't think they were probably the healthiest there, but I mean, I think they had sorbate potassium in there, to be quite straightforward. But at that point, I didn't care. I was like, I want those cookies. And I also had some Haagen-Dazs vanilla bean ice cream. Now, that's pretty good because you have a lot less sugar in that, or I should say artificial chemicals, right? Haagen-Dazs is really a high-class ice cream. And, I call it high-class considering the price. But when you choose a flavor that's fairly minimal, such as vanilla, you know that you're getting somewhat more natural ingredients than, say, if you had like caramel explosion and all that stuff. Although Haagen-Dazs still is very good ice cream because as far as I've read since, I read the ingredients, they still do not, I shouldn't say still do not. Yeah, maybe I can say still do not. Well, there's no polysorbate in their ice cream. So that's really good because if you do a bit of research on polysorbate, you'll see that it's some form of emulsifier, and they use it a lot to make like food look creamier and fluffier. So they'll even put it in pickles. So, why do they put it in pickles, you ask? Simply because you eat more pickles, right? If the pickle is fluffy and you put the pickle in your mouth, the fluffiness will make it that it'll just go down the throat a lot easier. And then you have another pickle and another pickle. So that's why they put emulsifiers such as polysorbate in pickles. And they put it a lot in a lot of ice cream. Like if you just stop and look at the ingredients. Oh, speaking of ingredients, because today I had another craving. I was like, you know what? I want some healthy juice. And I looked at all the juice bottles, and one of them looked really, really healthy. I mean, it looked like, man, this thing is darn it healthy. And then I turn the bottle and I read the label on the back, and it says potassium de sorbate. So right away, I'm like, is this good or bad? I don't know. So I take out my smartphone, dun, 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 and I literally Google. And what I found was, well, you know, something's up when they say it's safe as long as you do it within the permitted dosage. I'm sorry, but when something says the permitted dosage, it's still saying, well, technically speaking, you're not supposed to have it. But if you have in very minimal quantities, that's all right. What does that mean, basically? That means, I mean, would you take a minimum dosage of, say, snake venom? Would you take a minimum dosage of, say, Windex or Pledge? So, why do these companies insist on saying minimal dosage is all right? I'm not just talking about the companies. Why are the quote unquote organizations that are supposed to be protecting the consumers, right? Health Canada and all these things. And if you're in the States, it's the FDA. And why do they get to say, well, the companies have agreed that a minimum dosage is all right. But the reality is, you can have a minimum dosage in your apple juice, but then you can have a minimum dosage also in your cornflakes, and then you can have a minimum dosage in your ice cream, and then you can have a minimum dosage in your chocolate bar. So at the end of the day, you've clearly busted that minimum dosage, and that's where I get a little, flustered with companies because they seem to disregard humans, because if they accept this kind of behavior, you know, what does that say? For those of you watching on YouTube, while I'm recording this, I see my camera is lagging, so I know the audio won't lag. I know that's a big word, but if the video lags, that's a little out of my control. I really don't know what's happening. Are we like on the oh, no, we're the 5th of July. Yesterday was the American celebration, but it's Sunday. Kids are out of school, right? 23rd. That's usually when they finish. So are they all on TikTok right now going, oh my God, you should check out Serenity Winz. It's a great podcast. Okay, maybe not. But my little wheel has been spinning trying to log me into the live now, and it says between 6-7 frames per second, so it's not catching on. But I do have the recording button, and I did decide to record this, so there you go. Okay, I've been talking a lot now, and I barely talked about the subject. Yes, so I do believe, and this is just my hypothesis, variety is important. I think as much as we need discipline and, we need a steady relationship and whatnot, variety is just part of the course. Now, you can get variety in all types of manners, right? Obviously, if you're in a long lasting, loving relationship and you want variety, I suggest that you stay varietied with your wife. Like maybe you guys want to spice up things in the bedroom, or hey, man, this is supposed to be about a recovering alcoholic. What the hell are you talking about spices in the bedroom? It is. It still is. It doesn't always have to be like, oh, this is so... Not that my podcast is really like that, but I think it actually touches it, because when I was consuming, when I was drinking, and I've had this conversation with a few members, we definitely have variety, right? We have all kinds of whiskeys, and we have all kinds of gins, and we have all kinds of scotches, and I'm being facetious right now, we don't have the variety of the alcohol, but our state of mind would be somewhat varied throughout the evening and throughout the different evenings also that we would be consuming. And at the end, though, what would happen was the variety was slightly different, but then night after night after night, it was the same. And it was the same, pardon the expression, hellhole, right? We weren't happy. And if we weren't happy at night, we certainly weren't happy in the morning when we woke up. And I say we, I'm talking about me. When I woke up in the morning, I was like, that's it, I'm done. I'm not touching this stuff anymore. And then lo and behold, 5 o'clock rolls around. Like if it was on a Saturday or Thursday or even on a Friday, maybe even on a Sunday, I'd be like, I guess I can go and have one more. So variety was there, but for the wrong reasons. And I guess that's what it's all about. We can have variety, but we need it for the right reasons. And because, and what are the right reasons and what are the wrong reasons? The right reasons is there's some sort of evolution that's going to take place. You're going to learn something by doing that variety. Now, what it is, you don't know because only the future knows. Maybe you'll learn that in the end, you are better off with your regular discipline. And that's what I learned. When I seek out variety, I know that there's a purpose behind it. So for instance, last week when I went into, I wouldn't say bad shit crazy in terms of, my cookies and my ice cream, because most of you would say, well, that's nothing, man. A box of cookies, when a little mini tub of Haagen-Dazs ice cream all in one night. Ooh, you're such a junk food eater. Watch out, man. Okay. Perhaps. But in my case, that was a lot. But I needed to do it because that's where I was at. Would one call this a craving? Possibly. I think it was just once more another one of those giving myself permission to. And you see, the fact that I did that today when I went to go do some shopping because I want to do my chicken curry, which I did, which is awesome, by the way. So if there's any women listening out there, I'm a great cook. I'm a great cook. I know how to cook chicken. No, I'm not. I mean, I am, but and I was walking and I was in the aisle and I actually passed in front of the cookie aisle and I just looked at him like, whoa, no. And it wasn't like oh no, I got to stop myself. It was really like, no, I'm far from being in the mood. I don't want to have any cookies. I don't want to have any sugar. I didn't even go to the ice cream. I was just like, that's it. I had it last week. I usually have it once a week. So I guess today counted as last week or this week, right? Thursday and then Sunday. And I'm happy about that. It's good because I had the variety on Thursday. And today I'm like, no, I'm sticking to the plan. And I think that if we can understand the importance of and the reason why we need the variety, then we can navigate in those situations where sometimes we might be a little like, whoa, what's going on here? And because we give ourselves the condition that it's all right? The permission that it's all right. One of the things that we struggle, I say we, I guess me, is the idea that I can never, ever drink again. And technically speaking, it's a lie. I can drink whenever I want. It's my decision. It's my choice. Now, because I know what's going to happen, not necessarily in terms of complete debauchery and running around half naked and stealing a cop car or anything like that, but just because of how I'm going to feel after that, even just one glass, I'm going to feel like shit. I'm going to feel like I'm going to feel like shit. And that's a promise. Boy, I really lost Christopher Watkins today. Those 40 minutes, because it took me about 40 minutes to try to figure out what to do with my life. They really kind of sucked some of the energy. I don't think it sucked the energy out of me personally, but just It sucked the energy out of Christopher Walken and all my other characters. Maybe I don't know. Where's Sean? I'm right here. Okay, good, Sean. Good, because we lost you last time. Yeah, that's the Chicago way. All right. So the fact that I have a choice and you have a choice to stop and think before you have that glass. And I think today, I know I talked a little about it last week, but today I actually had the opportunity to welcome, right? You stand in front and you say, I'm here to welcome the new person, who might be struggling, who might be suffering. And so one guy stood up and came and picked up his envelope, which was really awesome. And another person, a woman, and she said, I didn't get up because I took a drink. She says, I've just been struggling for the last few days because of stuff that's going on in her life. And she said, when you said, is there anyone suffering? She got up. So from my point of view, that was great. Like in the sense that the words that I used, which to me, I was just channeling because I asked my JD, I said, JD, I know there's a huge responsibility in what I'm about to do. And just so I'm on top, make sure that you send those words down to me. And I think that's exactly what happened. So, and then there was another person who got up who celebrated his 30 days. 30 days. For some people, 30 days, it's a miracle. It is. Because when you've been drinking all your life and you've been consuming and partaking in all kinds of substances, you can't even think of like one day without it. So when you hit 30 days, that is a beautiful 30-day miracle. And it's important to celebrate it. And so the choice of not drinking is ours. It's yours. You can decide not to drink. No one else can decide for you. You have to. And if you want variety in your life, well, find a different way. Maybe instead of opening that bottle or instead of going to the bar, you can go for a walk. Maybe you could, hey, if watching Netflix changes your mind from drinking, I'm all for it, And understanding that we give ourselves permission, knowing that we have a choice. And I think this is really the important thing. It's knowing that you have the choice. Because when we're a slave to any form of substance, that's when we don't have a choice. And it's painful to understand a lack of choices in our lives. That's when you're a slave. When you're a slave to the bottle. When the bottle decides when you drink. It's not you, it's the bottle. If you just see the bottle or the glass or whatever, or you're with people, then you're a slave. But the moment that you decide that you don't want that drink, that you're walking away from it, that's when you have power. And that's your choice. And that certainly could also be considered as a form of variety, because instead of consistently doing what you used to do, you are transforming. And yeah, on the other sense, if you're looking to spice up things with the little misses in the bedroom, Amazon, they got all kinds of toys out there, Uh, I strongly ill advise any sort of, using another person, in your relationship. But, and hey, if you're single, then obviously all bets are off as far as I'm concerned. But just keep in mind, variety is just part of our life. And every now and then, if you do seek some variety, just take it with a grain of salt and understand that that's actually part of being human. Because if we didn't want variety, then we wouldn't have iPhones and iPads and Teslas and Bentleys and all these things that entertain us every now and then. They all came out because they figured out that as humanity, as humans, we need variety. Now, I have an old phone. I don't know if that's why I'm having a slow internet today, but I think it's an SG. I think it's an SG. Hold on a second. Let me see what I can see. I think it's an SG9. Yeah, like Samsung 9 or 7. So just to tell you how old and someone gave it to me. So there you go. So maybe I'm in need for a new phone eventually. I don't know. We'll figure it out. So that's about as much as I want to talk about variety because we're already at the halfway mark. Yes, we are. Whoop, whoop. So I want to take a little short breakish type of thing to say, if you would like some great furniture and some great decorating ideas, and you're saying, I don't want to pay the full price. I want to get a really good deal. Well, guess what? You're in luck. Because now Serenity Winz is, I guess associated would be the right word, with a furniture company called cruiseaway.ca. They have great furniture, but not just furniture. They have like pretty much anything you want to decorate your house, whether it's furniture, chairs, tables, whether it's kitchen, decorating bowls, wooden bowls, bowls with wooden sticks, you name it, they have carpets, they have armoires, and they do a lot of, I guess I can share it. If you go on their website, you'll see that they have also custom made stuff. So they can actually do custom made stuff. Now, I think I forgot to mention this the first time. Very important, cruiseaway.ca. So this discount is mostly, and I only applicable to Canadian shoppers. So if you're anywhere in Canada, you're in luck. You can take advantage of this discount. If you happen to be watching from the United States, not yet. But he's working on it. He's working on it. So that's, I'm excited about that. So cruiseaway.ca, and the promo code is SWD10. That's right. SW as in Serenity Winz discount. SWD. Yeah, I screwed up myself too. SWD10 for that discount. Yes. And while I'm talking about a association with the Cruiseaway, let me also remind you at the halfway mark that this show, Serenity Winz, is not sponsored, affiliated, or associated with any nonprofit organization or movement such as Alcoholics Anonymous. I have to say it often just so people really understand. Like if someone tells you, hey, you should go listen to this podcast, and you listen to it and you're 10 minutes in and you're like, wow, this is really good. I think I'm going to join the movement. And you're thinking, then you join the movement and then you say, yeah, well, I got the official podcast there, Serenity Winz, and people are going to be, what official podcast? He's not supposed to do that. How come he did that? That's not supposed to happen. So I want to avoid that scene, right? That disruption in the hall. And I just want to say, inspired, I am inspired, wanting to contribute and give back, absolutely. The chance to help someone who's still suffering, who might be suffering, maybe you're listening to this and you're already drunk. It could happen. Absolutely. But these are all my initiatives. I want to give back in the way that I know how, besides contributing when I go to meetings and I'm either an assistant for the literature or whatever, or this or the welcoming. On my own time, let's just say, this is my brainchild. This is Serenity Winz. And for those of you who didn't know yet, my name is Phoenix. I'm Phoenix. Yep, I'm Phoenix. So, very important. Having gotten that out of the way, let's go to subject number 2. That's right, Bob. You tell them what they've got. All right, well, here we go. Oh, this is a really good one, too. And maybe it's even somewhat connected to our first topic of the day. So, topic number two, and I think this one is really important because if we avoid this, we kind of miss the mark. So, topic number two, celebrate or acknowledge the small failures in our life. And why do I think that that's important and worth talking about? Because I think too many people are afraid of failing. And so they just remain in their little square space, maybe in front of their laptop, watching a series, maybe in their cubicle at work, working, doing something that they hate doing, maybe traveling on the road all across Canada, doing something they dislike, because they're afraid of failing. And today, the person who shared in our hall at the fellowship, because that's how I read it in English. It's called the fellowship. Because I used to say le mouvement, right? The French people, the mouvement. But in English, it's called the fellowship. Truth be told, I prefer the word fellowship because it's not about the movement. It's about a fellowship. We're all fellows. And yeah, even the girls are fellows. We're like, oh, fellows, fellas, fellowship. And he was sharing, and this is completely anonymous because there's no way you're going to hear his name, that he was in a process of transforming his life because he was leaving his current career path, and he said, I don't know where I'm going, but I know that it's time for a change. And that inspired me so much. I actually walked up to him and I said, hey, did you know that Apple never hires based on experience? They hire based on personalities. And I know you don't know what you're doing yet, but did you ever think of becoming a podcast producer? And he said, that's really interesting. So we exchanged numbers and we're going to meet for coffee. Because there was something definitely in his personality that made me go, I could see him producing the show. I could definitely see him adding a lot to the show. We'll see. Maybe this is just my imagination, But in any case, even the fact that I had the courage to walk up to him and even, ask him that, I'm proud of that. And when we celebrate and acknowledge our failures, what's really taking place is we're acknowledging that something is changing. We're growing, right? Because if we failed at it for whatever reason, it's because we weren't good at it. And if we weren't good at it, it's probably because we haven't done it a lot. And so when you fail, you're beginning to do something you are not used to doing. And rather than seeing the failure as, God damn it, and once again, what the? And you actually see the failure as, I didn't see that one coming. Then you find a little bit more courage to go and do that same thing again. And you might fail, right? I'm live dating right now, and sometimes I say stuff, woo-wee. So I got to share this one with you. So about 3 weeks, did I already share this with you? I think I did, but not in the same context. So I'm going to share it again with you in the context of today's subject. So about a month ago, 3 weeks, a month ago, I go to my little restaurant. Well, it's not mine. It happens to be in front of where I live. And there is a there's a cute waitress there, and we see each other quite a bit. We do see each other quite a bit, and so we smile and this and that. And then I go back about 2 weeks after that, and I am in the process of applying the concept of keep them guessing on their toes, right? Because let's face it, if you give a person everything they want all the time, eventually they'll just take you for granted. So I'm applying this principle. And so she just had her hair done and she looked kind of cute with her hair. And she looked at me with a big smile. She goes, I said, "Oh, you did your hair." And she's like, "Yeah, I did. Do you like it?" And I'm like hesitating just to like keep that titillation there of. And then I say something like, "Well, I like your hair long." Man, she freaked on me. She said, well, I like my hair the way it is." And she walked off. And when it was time to like get my food, another waitress came to serve me. She was so upset with the idea that I didn't right away go along in mode. I didn't say he was ugly. I didn't say he was terrible. I just said, and by the way, it's true. I do prefer women with longer hair. Why? I don't know. Maybe because it's more feminine. And by the way, this show is for all humans, women and men, right? So we're not going to get into her reaction afterwards. And by the way, after I was in, damage control mode, and I believe I told her, I said, you know, I'll never, I'm remembering it. I said, before I noticed your hair or your clothes or your shoes, I'll always notice your smile. True. That's what I said. Obviously, I'm paraphrasing because I said it in French. But I just said, before I notice all the outside stuff, I'll notice your smile. Did it do, damage control as such? No. Because last time I went, which I think was last week, I kind of saw her. She kind of said hi quickly, smiled even. But then the other waitress came to take my order. So I'm thinking she was just being polite, saying, I got to smile at this asshole because he didn't like my hair short, blah, blah, blah. Now, why am I telling this story? Because I celebrated the failure, the colossal failure. Obviously, I made her feel like not very well, and that's my responsibility, although it was far from what I wanted to do. And despite the crash, and it's funny because actually, what's even funnier is that day, my sponsor, right, in French we say parrain, we were sitting on my front porch and we were talking, and I had shared that, and he started laughing. He goes, and as we're talking, she comes back towards her truck. She happens to drive a white pickup truck. Who would have thought? And she's got her sunglasses on, and she's clearly like the time before she had gone to his truck, and she had acknowledged us, and she said, "Oh, you like it when I parked there?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's kind of funny." But this time, she just got in her truck and just drove off like. Brrr. So, my sponsor looked at me and he just kind of chuckled, and we both laughed. We had a good laughter, and so I choose to celebrate that failure because while I was doing something that I was not used to doing, I was trying something new. I didn't know what the results was going to be, but I know that by doing something new, eventually down the road, you get different results. And so in life, a person who, first of all, fears failure, right? Because some people actually fear it and they do everything they can to fear it. Or a person who, when they do have failure, they just want to forget about it altogether. Well, guess what? That is going to make for a life full of, what shall I say, mediocrity and the same old, same old. So by celebrating our failures in life, we get to recognize that we're growing. We're somewhere, we're getting outside of our comfort zone. And some of you may say, well, that hair example is a terrible example. And I might perhaps even agree with you. But as far as I'm concerned, that worked for me. And because right now I'm learning how to be social. And I really don't know how to be social. I learn from what I see and from what I read. And so this was something that I tried. Would I do it again? Perhaps not the same way, but I think there's a bit of truth in, that concept of, it's like when a girl is hitting on me. What do you mean a girl's hitting on you? You have girls hitting on you? I've had some girls hitting on me. And it's just so easy. It almost makes, there's no chase. It's like, it's just like, okay, yeah, okay, all right, I'll sleep with you. Okay, maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, but there's a bit of truth in that. What's another example of, remember a few months ago when I had that major stupid, it wasn't even a parking ticket, it was like it was some form of ticket. I don't even remember what it was, but I mean, I remember what it was because it was $800 total. That was a failure. That was complete failure because had I just learned to understand what was going on and deal with the situation correctly, I'm pretty sure the police officer would have just given me like a warning or a $74 ticket for not having my insurance papers. But instead of just accepting the situation, I got up on my high horses thinking that, why are they always attacking me and this and that? And it cost me a good $800, which, by the way, I'm happy to say that I've taken an agreement, and so I pay a little bit every month. So there you go. You know what? You meet a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot, but many, the alcoholics that really had like a really crash and burn moment. It's amazing how many of them share stories of, I'm rebuilding my life. I didn't have any credit before, and now I have credit. Or now I'm able to buy a house. I'm putting down a down payment on a mortgage for my house, and so you just never know. You never know how someone can turn around because alcohol transforms us. Alcohol literally does, and it's not just that night that you're drinking. This is a point that I want to make. It's even the days after. Those fumes are still somewhere in your brain. And by the way, it's also the alcohol, but if we are constantly looking for some form of distraction, well, we haven't faced what's really bothering us. So clearly we're going to keep doing those stupid patterns, those self-destructive mode patterns until we begin to clean ourselves, to cleanse, or as I call the 12-step program, soul purifying. And some of you may be thinking, well, that's pretty intense. And then some of you may be going, no, keep talking like that. So, but that's how I define it. It's a soul purifying principle. It's the 12 steps. And I know that every now and then we get to talk about one of the steps. And I thought I'd throw in a bit of variety in today, right? Because obviously the whole theme was variety. And so let me just see where we are time wise. All right, we still got some time left. We still got some time left. I could probably get into a third subject topic, right? Because we understand, right? I don't need to go into more details about the necessary task of celebrating your failures. Like, even, okay, you know what? Here's a great example. And I hear this quite often. Even if your failure was you said you weren't going to drink and you had that drink the next day, celebrate it. More importantly, go to a meeting, get your chip again, and start over. Because you might be having, you might have 5 chips, you might have 10 chips already collected, you might have like 15 envelopes. Eventually, you're going to catch it. It's going to catch on. But more importantly, each time you go and you get your chip, you're starting over. And each time you celebrate and you go, you know what? That chip lasted 2 days. And then maybe another time you'll do it and you'll say, you know what? That chip lasted 10 days. And then you'll be like, and then maybe you'll go back and you go, you know what? I had my first 30 days today. 30 days. That's the chip that I gave to the man who walked up. I said, are there any 30-day miracles? I don't think I used the word miracles. Well, maybe I did. Anyway, it's not important. And he got up. 30 days. I remember when I decided to stop drinking, I really felt that it was a miracle because, I said that I'd be a better version of myself and I'd spread his word. Literally. If you get me out of this bed sick as a dog, I'll be the better version of myself, better version of Phoenix, and I'll spread your word. And here I am, close to 2 years after that, doing a podcast, mixing a bit of comedy. Christopher Watkins. And Trump, we can't forget Trump. We agreed. We agreed that I was going to be here once in a while. Oh, I think you forgot the Chicago way. That's the Chicago way, right? Sean, I'm Sean Connery. Well, you would have asked me 2 years ago, you're going to do podcasts and you're going to be having to do Christopher Watkins, Donald Trump, and Sean Connery. And who knows who's going to pop up next? I would have said, you're insane. There's no way. Oh, and you're going to be talking, you're going to be spreading the word of the great one, whatever you want to call him. I call him JD. That's my personal thing, but you can call him whatever you want. There's no religion involved in this fellowship and the movement. An alcoholic's an alcoholic. You could be, Muslim, you could be Jewish, you could be Christian, you could be Buddhist. It doesn't matter. When you have that affliction of needing to drink to make yourself feel better, and in the long run, you're actually making yourself feel worse. And sometimes it's either prison, death. Those are the two choices, actually. It's prison or death. You have, a lot of people, they end up dying or they end up in prison. Or crazy. I think there's also crazy. Crazy is probably another one of those. And so you choose. You choose. And I think that's another reason why I went up to the person who shared today, because, he's been in a movement now for quite a few years, over a decade. And when he shared his story, it was really like, man, he never thought he'd, be able to do so many years back then. And now he's very much involved and he goes all over the world. And there was something about him that just made me go, man, that would be a great fit. So by celebrating the failures we get better at it. So even if you're struggling and you said, tomorrow or today, I'm not going to drink, and then it's 5 a.m. or 5 p.m., and you have a beer in your hand, it's all right because we're all here for you. This podcast, although unofficially with the AA, I'm telling you, there's an army of people waiting for you. Just go into a hall, any hall. There's meetings. There's an application. See, if I put the website of the meeting guide right there in my promo, then people are going to say, "Hey, man, that's like official representation." I'll be like, "No, it's just information that I'm offering in order for someone who may be listening to the podcast, like, where can I get this information?" It's a good question. I'm going to ask that question not in my next meeting, but yeah, maybe. I mean, it's public information. It's not like it's public information, but this is challenging. It's challenging to do a podcast on this subject matter. You want to do good. You want to be able to reach out to someone who might need it, and your hands are a little tied because, your hands are a little tied. Well, yeah, something to think about. So that's it, and that's why it's important to celebrate the failures, whether it's you're getting. I remember someone said to me, "I have 20 chips already," and I said, "Look, maybe it's on the 21st chip that it's going to work." And a lot of stories, people like that. So, and maybe you've been sober for like years and years and years, and then something happened and you lost it. It happens after 10 years, after I don't know how many years, but it happens. I've heard stories. I have one member that I know who said, he's now at something like I think 20 years or something. But he actually had 21 years before that, and then one day he lost it. So he keeps telling me, I lost it. So technically I only have 21 years. But in reality, he has more like 40 years of sobriety. So even someone who's well versed in the 12 steps in the program and understands how it's about a way of living, even they can screw up. So that's why it's important to celebrate the small failures. And I did mention the word small failures because perhaps the bigger failures, they're harder to accept. So what is your definition of a small failure versus a big failure? I think that's personal to each their own. My small failure might be seen as a big failure to someone else. And someone's big failure to them may seem like a small failure to me. In any case, recognizing the idea that failures are part of our advancement. It's part of growing and expanding. We talk very often about getting outside of our comfort zone, right? Well, if you're outside your comfort zone, that means you're in new territory. So you're bound to screw up here and there. It's bound to happen. That's all I got to say. It's going to happen. So might as well take it with a grain of salt. Sand, I don't know what it is, salt or sand. You can put some mud, throw it over your shoulder for all I care. Just make sure you do something, some sort of, okay, now I get that, And you'll see for yourself. Because if you do I wouldn't say the opposite, but if you just go over it and you actually try to bury it and hide it as if it never happened, well, then you're probably going to be less inclined to try to go and do it a second time, because you will have associated some sort of negative failure, and perhaps even there's going to be some form of shame or humiliation inside of you. And that's like the opposite of love. So instead of growing, you're going to like shrink back into yourself and hide into that little shell of yours. Again, these are just my hypothesis, but I know a thing or two about that because I've been there. I've been in my shell. I've been, you know, for the last year, if not 6 months, I'm shaking so many people's hands, and people walk up to me and go, "Oh, you're so full of light and this and that." I'm like, I, you know, I guess I am, because probably there's part of me now that's opening up. But a year ago, or even 2 years ago, no one would have said that to me, because I was afraid. And the difference is now when there is okay, I have a really good example of small failures, of things that happened to me just this week. And I wanted to talk about it earlier on, and I completely forgot. But now, obviously, it was a small failure. So I was working with my client. I was preparing a pallet, and as I'm preparing the pallet, I don't know, I'm moving it around. It's on the truck. It's like the jigger, they call it, the jigger. Blah, blah, blah. And so my client comes up and he goes, "Oh, I gotta show you something inside." I'm like, "Okay," and I just literally said, "Okay," letting go of the truck, thinking that it's still there. And I walked, and then he showed me a list. And I said, "Yeah, okay." And then I walked back outside by the garage door, and I noticed the jigger and the pallet was like, I think it was like 10 or 15 feet. And it was actually leaning against a car that was parked. And I was like, oh my goodness. The thing rolled. Now, it's not a very steep hill, but it's still, it still rolled like, and this thing was heavy. It was a huge pallet, right? It was going to Vancouver. That's right. If you want to buy something from Vancouver, got to do it at cruiserweight.ca and get SWD10, 10% discount. All right. And I noticed, it was one of those plastic, it was an old car. It was a plastic car, whatever. And I noticed that it had a bit of it wasn't dented, but like the plastic of the bumper was like kind of pushed in. So as soon as I pulled back the pallet, the plastic went back into its normal position. I could still see like a bit of whitish, would look like scratches possible, but I wasn't sure if it was the pallet or not. And as soon as I noticed that, I was on my way to go to the next door because I knew whose car it was. And then he kind of walked out, and I don't know if he saw the pallet against it or whatever, but I looked at him and I said, the pallet moved. And he goes, "It moved." A very nice fellow, by the way. He's Cuban. He's been here now for a few years. I said, "Yeah, it moved and it touched your car." And he looked at it and goes, "Oh, it looks fine." And I said, "What about that?" He goes, "Oh, no, I something hit it a long time ago." What am I doing, a Hindu accent? I don't know. He was more Cuban. What's a Cuban accent? I don't know what's a Cuban. You want to see my fellow friends? No, I'm trying to do Tony Montana. Say hello to my friends. Okay, he doesn't talk like that. I mean, Tony Montana talks like that, but say hello to my friend. All right, whatever. But the guy doesn't talk like that. But anyways, turns out that the car was already, it was an older car too. It was like easily 15 years old or 20 years old. But the point was, it was the first time that had happened to me. So I went like, oh, okay, be more aware of the palate. And I celebrated it because I kind of laughed about it on my own, recognizing the mistake that I had done. And also, I had the courage to walk up to the owner and risk him saying, "You just smashed up my car." But the part of the elements of the program is you have to be rigorously honest with yourself, right? So if I fuck up from now on, I gotta own it. I gotta say, you know what? I fucked up. And after I did that, I felt really good. I felt really good because it was like, oh, nothing happened. I thought something was going to happen, or if not thinking something, I was open that something might happen, and nothing happened. And so to me, that was just a confirmation that my evolution, you know, they say that you apply the 12-step program in every sphere of your life. Well, that's what I'm doing. It's not just about doing it for recovering from alcohol. I'm doing it, in my dating life. I'm doing it in my personal life. I'm doing, everywhere I can, I apply those 12 steps, which goes without saying that most likely the next person who, you know, the next woman that I date seriously will fairly likely have some form of spirituality that we can both share. We might not have the same definitions, but we'll have the same understanding. And I think that that's really, 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 really important. Oh, look at that. We've gone to the 1 hour mark, right? And I'm definitely doing the show now to be a 1 hour podcast. So I want to do one last thing before we go. I know that every time we talk about one of the programs, and so one of the steps in the programs, and so I just want to read to you before we take off. And I think I said last time I was going to do share number 7. Yes. Okay. So I'm going to share with you step number 7. And it goes like this: humbly ask him, right? Your source, your energy, however you want to define it, it's up to you, to remove our shortcomings. And of course, when we say shortcomings, it's like our defaults and whatever. So in step number 6, which I think we actually talked about, we said that we were ready for them to go, and especially for our higher power to remove them. But in step number 7, we actually ask him to remove our shortcomings, right? Once we've done the inventory, which we talked about earlier on, it was probably one of the first podcasts. You do a moral and internal inventory of all your emotions and the stuff you went through in life and whatnot, yada, yada, yada. And then in step number 5, we talked about that also. You get to share it with yourself, with your higher self, and with an actual human being, right? That's where the sponsor comes in. He's there to listen in complete acceptance. I know that when I'm talking with my friend, and I'll call him friend from now on because sponsor seems so clinical and he's so much more than that to me. I know that he'll give me advice, but it's like detached advice because he knows he's been there, and there's absolutely no judgment on his part. And I think that's one reason why I myself want to wait before I begin perhaps sponsoring a new member. Probably, I think judging is something that's far from my way of being. I think it's more in terms of, or let me rephrase that. It would not be about judging them. It most likely would be judging myself. Am I doing enough? Do I know enough? Am I helping out this person like I'm supposed to? And so rather than just accepting myself in the position that I am and saying, just keep doing what you're doing, I think I say a little, but probably a lot more knowledge and experience. I'll say it, experience. So I might screw up along the way every now and then, but I'm going to celebrate those failures. So that's what step number 7 is. Humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings. And yes, if you happen to be of the female, I was going to say species. Well, yeah, you're a male species, you're a female species, anyway, whatever. If you happen to be a woman, your God can also be humbly ask her to remove your shortcomings, right? You have to understand that this book was written a long time ago, right? Bob and Bill, they did this back in the 40s, so this is. But that's it. So let's finish off episode number 9 once more with the one serenity prayer. One more time. Dear, fill in the blank with whatever you want: God, spirit, soul, Jesus, whatever works for you. The tree across your house, everyone has different definitions. So, dear power, give me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change those that I can, and the wisdom to understand the difference between both. Yes. All right, folks. So I had a great time. We started a bit late, but that doesn't really affect you guys in any way whatsoever. I'm going to see how the recording is, and it should be back going on. I think it'll be going on by Thursday or something like that. We'll see. And hey, just to finish off, my little tagline: if you do it well for yourself. If you do it with respect for all, and do it with the intention of love for humanity. Thanks for listening and watching. Like, share, subscribe. Leave your comments somewhere. I'll see them eventually. If I haven't seen them yet, I'm working on that. It's a work in progress. Hey, who knows? Maybe my next producer will be like, you know where you can see those comments, right? I'm like, no, I have no idea. And let me just finish off one last time by saying this podcast is not at all sponsored, associated, or affiliated with any official nonprofit organizations such as Alcohol Anonymous. However, on the other flip side, we do have our sponsor, which is cruiserweight.ca. And with the promo code that you see there at the bottom there, SWD, as in Serenity Winz discount 10, when you go on our website at cruiserweight.ca, you will also have a 10% discount when you punch in your promo code. On that, folks, I had a great time, and I look forward to being with you again very soon. Have a great one. Have a great week. Cheers.